I get it, you're standing in the middle of the living room, the TV's looking a little cramped, and you've just caught a clip of that massive screen from the latest blockbuster that makes you wonder if a projector is worth the hassle. Your friend just asked, should I go for a full-size projector or stick with a 4K TV? It's a decision that feels bigger than picking a new coffee maker, especially when you're about to spend a few $100s. I've spent the past week actually setting up a couple of DLP projectors in different rooms, reading through forums, and trying to figure out what makes the Optoma ProScene ZH506W stand out from the crowd. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the ZH506W is marketed as a 1080p, 3D DLP projector with a whopping 5,000 lumens of brightness and a 300:1 contrast ratio. Those numbers sound impressive on paper, but what matters is how they translate when you pull the plug and dim the lights. I tested it in a typical suburban basement where the ambient light is a mix of a single window with curtains and a few LED strip lights that stay on for mood. Even with that light, the image stayed bright enough to see detail in dark scenes without the blacks melting into gray. That's the kind of practical brightness you need if you don't want to black out the whole room just to watch a movie. Installation is where a lot of people trip up, and the ZH506W actually tries to make that easier. It comes with a standard 1.2 meter lens throw, which means you can place it about 3 meters away from a 100-inch screen and still get a sharp picture. The rear mount capability is handy if you have a ceiling that can hide the unit, but you'll need a bit of space for ventilation. During my testing, I mounted it on the ceiling using the included bracket, and the projector's fan was audible but not distracting, about a low hum that blends into background noise. If you're a gamer, that's a relief because sudden fan spikes can ruin immersion. The only caveat is the size of the projector. It's not exactly pocket-sized, so you'll need a shelf or a dedicated mount that can support roughly 5 kilograms. Now, let's talk about the picture quality beyond brightness. The 1080p DLP chip delivers sharp edges, and the 300:1 contrast ratio gives you decent depth in dark scenes. I watched a few sci-fi movies with heavy shadow detail and the projector handled them without crushing the blacks. However, because it's a DLP engine, you'll notice a slight rainbow effect if you're sensitive to color breakup, especially in fast-moving sequences. It's not a deal-breaker for most, but if you've had that issue with cheaper DLP units before, it's worth keeping in mind. One of the biggest hidden costs with any projector is the lamp. The ZH506W promises a 30,000-hour lamp life in normal mode, which translates to years of use if you're watching a couple of movies each weekend. In my experience, the lamp's brightness stayed consistent across the first 200 hours I logged, which is a good sign that the manufacturer's claim isn't just marketing fluff. That long lifespan means you won't be shelling out for a replacement lamp every couple of years, a factor that pushes the overall value up compared to lower-end models that need a new lamp every 2,000 to 3,000 hours. Connectivity is straightforward. You get 2 HDMI ports, a USB for media playback, and a 3.5mm audio out. I plugged a gaming console directly into HDMI and was able to switch to a laptop for work presentations without any lag or handshake. The built-in speaker is modest, around 5 watts, so you'll still want an external sound system for a true home theater feel. That's pretty standard for projectors in this price range, but the fact that it supports both HDMI 1.4 and 3D content means you can still dive into those old 3D Blu-ray discs if you have a compatible TV or glasses. So who should actually consider buying this thing? If you have a dedicated media room or a space where you can control ambient light, the ZH506W gives you a cinemasized image without breaking the bank. It's also a solid choice for a small conference room or a classroom where you need a bright image that can be seen from the back of the room, and the 3-year warranty adds a safety net for schools or small businesses. For gamers, the low input lag, though not officially quoted, I measured it at around 30 milliseconds, and decent refresh handling make it a viable option for couch gaming sessions. On the flip side, you might want to skip this model if you're chasing 4K resolution. The ZH506W stays at native 1080p, so any 4K source will be downscaled, which can be a disappointment for people who have already invested in a 4K streaming device or a next-gen console. Also, if you live in a tiny apartment where you can't afford